Let's move to this story because there's all sorts of relevances around this at the moment. And breaking, by the way, in the last few minutes, 4 people have been remanded in custody at Westminster Magistrates Court following that incident at RAF Brize Norton, claimed by the group Palestine Action, in which 2 aircraft were damaged. So we now know that sort of on the back of that, MPs voted 385 to 26 to ban Palestine Action as a terrorist group following that £7 million worth of damage to RAF aircraft and the arrest. Jeremy Corbyn, Diane Abbott opposed the ban, citing concerns over a right to protest and also their views on UK arms to Israel. The government emphasised Palestine Action's use of weapons and vandalism alongside bans on other extremist groups. Let's speak to, with independent reviewer of terrorism legislation, Jonathan Hall, KC. Jonathan, good afternoon to you. Is this a complicated case? Is it nuanced? Is it, as far as you're concerned, from a legal perspective, is it all cut and dry? Where do you stand on this?
Yeah, it's a bit nuanced because it's the first time, as far as I'm aware, and I think I know about this. It's the first time that a group's been banned because of the limb of terrorism, serious damage to property. Right? Most groups are banned because they're threatening to kill people. So it's the first time that that's happened,
yeah.
And I think it was worth a debate. I think the line I take is you've got to be consistent about these things. So it can't depend upon whether you agree or disagree with what Palestine Action trying to do. You look at the methods, you realise it is very serious damage. And where I came out at was that it's acceptable. They're highly organised, and the police will benefit, I think, from some strong additional powers, which they wouldn't have otherwise, like to deal with fundraising. So that's where I come out. But it's worth a debate. I was pleased to see it debated on the floor of the House of Commons.
And I guess, I mean, I suppose the clincher, if that's the way to look at it, of this was that the damage, allegedly, and all the rest of it, I don't think there's any denials, to be honest. I'm not breaching anything by saying that, but was on a military base. That's, I mean, had it been at the Imperial War Museum or something, to make a similar point, perhaps we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah, maybe it's what tipped over the edge. I mean, if you look at what the government said, they said it was actually a series of events. And I mean, look, it sounds a bit crazy, but quite a lot of people commit terrorism offences. The old animal rights people used to smash up labs. Yeah. And with terrorism, like, there's the law, which is, does it qualify? And the answer is yes. And then there's the discretion. Like, is it worth making a big issue out of it, making them terrorists? Now, the view's obviously been taken after quite a number of incidents, some of them very serious, actually. It's best to have those extra powers in the toolkit. But you could have a situation in which they just did one thing and the government would go, look, we've caught them. They're not going to do it again. They're not training or anything like that. Let's just deal with them under the normal criminal law. That's the sort of balance.
It's an interesting balance, but of course what's now happened, we understand there's a new direct action group started and they've called themselves Yvette Cooper. Now, one can only extrapolate from this that the idea is that they want to get banned so that they can be mentioned. Yvette Cooper, for those who don't know, is the Home Secretary, of course, so that they can conjure up this headline that Yvette Cooper has been banned. Yeah,
I agree. I mean, look, the whole point of terrorism or protest, actually, is to communicate. And if you can communicate by winding people up and getting a few laughs, then you will. Look, there were some very serious terror groups. Al-Muhajirun was an intensely serious Islamist terrorist group. It was connected to so many killings. They changed their name at the drop of a hat. I mean, there were all sorts of ways in which they do it. This is to be expected.
Yes, I mean, there's no way around, but I suppose it does make a mockery. It just reminded me of when they, when the news had to dub any member of the IRA, or Sinn Féin, I should say, obviously a big difference, Sinn Féin, and they dubbed voices, which was just so ridiculous. And this came on, as you will remember, Jonathan, under Mrs Thatcher. And it sort of made a mockery of things, and I would assume that if a new direct action group are calling themselves Yvette Cooper, they're sort of hoping for a kind of similar response to things.
Yeah, I mean, let's see how things pan out. There's often an argument, it's not entirely related, but with new extreme right-wing groups, there are some very minor ones around, like Sonnenkrieg Division, Feuerkrieg Division, and people sometimes say, listen, if you ban these things, you'll actually give them the oxygen of publicity, to use the Mrs Thatcher comment, and they'll become a bit glamorized. Actually, what happened in practice with those groups they melted away. They all thought that they'd been infiltrated by the feds as they saw it. So let's see how things pan out. Obviously, the police, they're aware of the risk of the sort of I am Spartacus, right? The idea that everyone's going to go and say, you know, arrest me now. They obviously realise there's that risk. But they've obviously decided it's best to have those powers and use them wisely.
Indeed. We will watch with interest. Meantime, great to have you on, Jonathan. Thank you for your time, sir. Jonathan Hall-Casey. Do you remember that back in the day? It probably predates, but there was a lot of people breaking into animal testing laboratories in order to stop animals being exploited. And that was a big thing. I knew someone who stole a beagle from an animal testing centre, which he thought he was... I mean, it cost him a fortune. This dog smoked 40 a day, for God's sake. Boom, boom. But nonetheless, it was a big thing. People were getting in there and taking the animals out. There was footage of the animal people with, you know, crates of rabbits wearing eyeliner and stuff. All sorts of scenes, and that kind of disappeared. Now, was that a terrorist organisation? Because they were trying to rescue the bunnies and the dogs. And of course, animal experimentation does still go on. You don't tend to hear much about that. Would you describe that as an act of terrorism? I think some people would. They would say, yeah, actually, the reason we are actually making a life-saving pill here that we think could save children's lives who've got some horrendous disease. And unfortunately, one of the ways that we do that as a triple check is that we test this very same pharmaceutical on monkeys or dogs or cats, or you name the animal, every single one of them would be in there at some point. So maybe it's that. I think a lot of places stopped using makeup, didn't they, for animal testing?